about what was going on in my head.
The process going on.
Yeah. So I had my friends write these cards of encouraging words that when I'm preparing for a race and the day or two before the race when the jitters are really getting to me, I read through these cards and it sort of builds my confidence, encourages me. And so when I'm racing, those words come to mind a lot of times. When it gets tough, I'll hear those words from my friends on the cards. Sometimes hymns come to mind. We had a particular hill in China that was a mile long, and it was about a average 8% grade, which is a pretty steep hill. It felt like we were going straight up, and I prayed my way up that hill because the course was 3 loops that we had to repeat, so we had to go up that hill 3 times, and it got harder each time. So the 3rd time I was just praying that I would be able to get up it and stay on my bike, because I saw people getting off their bikes and walking. And
so are they disqualified when they get off the bike?
It's allowed.
So what are the fun things you brought back?
All right. Well, I just brought some interesting things. I mentioned I worked with a Chinese tutor, and he helped me prepare. This was the box of cards I carried with me, and these are some of the cards that I used quite frequently. He taught me some key phrases. So I had, well, I don't eat meat, and so the main thing was I didn't want any food that I couldn't identify not being able to eat. So he taught me how to say that I didn't want to eat meat, and so that's Bu Yao Cheer Rao. And so I could walk into a restaurant and say that, and so I might not know what I was eating, but it wasn't going to be meat.
Could it be Cheerios?
Well, not in China. They don't eat breakfast cereal. Key phrase was ni hao, hello, and then on the race course I learned jiao, because that's what everybody was hollering, which literally means add oil, but it's what they say, come on, to encourage and cheer. So those cards were handy. They had an opening ceremony, and they gave out these little banners, and they have Chinese and English writing, and the slogan for the city, Marine Leisure Palace Global Livable City. So Weihai was very proud of the fact that they're one of the cleanest cities in China, and they were, and they actually swept and washed the streets, the entire bike course, and I think they cleaned the bay we swam in. I don't know, it was the cleanest water I'd ever been in. And then when we crossed the finish line, our team manager gave us an American flag to wave, and I was very proud to receive that flag because the time limit on the course was very tight. They said in the materials they gave us that many people would take 10 hours to finish the course, but yet the race cutoff time was 9 hours.
And you finished in?
8:39. But I was expecting to take 9.5 hours, so that was a bit of a surprise. We had to wear credentials. So these were the credentials, and the number 2 designates that I could go into the athlete's lounge, and the number 8 designates field of play. So in our case, that would have been the transition area where we store all our gear and come back to between each leg. I brought some Chinese money home. They all have pictures of Chairman Mao, all of them. Let's see. And this is a yuan, which functions the same as our dollar, but the exchange rate is 6 to 1, so this is actually about 17 cents there. And then this one is half a yuan, so 8 cents, a whole piece of paper for that. And then the yuan comes in coins, and this is 1/10 of a yuan, which is maybe 5 cents, I don't know, 2 cents. I've got lost in the math now. They do have Starbucks. I'm saving that for last.
Oh, okay.
They do have Starbucks in China, and I bought a Starbucks card only to learn that it functions very differently than ours. So I'm still not sure I figured it out, but I did get a couple of free drinks out of it. So I was happy about that. And my favorite artifact is the medal. This is a finisher's medal I received for completing the race, and it has the little race mascot on one side. She's sort of an odd shape, and I asked about it, and they explained that she's a water droplet because Weihai is a coastal city, and so she's a water droplet, and then on the back it has the race logo. And it took me all week to figure out that this is not ID, it's LD, which stands for long distance, because that's the type of race we did.
So you said something about a children's...
Yes, so my hotel in Weihai was on the same street as a sign that said welfare, in English, welfare home for children, and then had more writing on Chinese, in Chinese that I didn't understand. And I passed by this sign every day going back forth between my hotel and the race venue. And since I'm a child welfare attorney, I was very curious, and so I asked one of the volunteers that was there to support the race about it. And in typical Chinese fashion, the Chinese people will do whatever they can to help you and make you more comfortable. And so as soon as I asked about this, she gets on the phone with the shelter and starts making arrangements. And 5 minutes later, I've got an appointment with the children's home. I've got a note from her, handwritten, explaining who I am and what I'm asking for, that I'm asking to be shown around, and to also I had asked for an address and for what they might need as far as a donation that I could send to them later. And so she has this all written out on a note, and she's got this all arranged in 5 minutes. So the day after the race, I went to this children's home, and it turned out to be harder even than I thought. I didn't know what I was going to because I've heard so much about Chinese orphanages. But the morning of, I decided to take a taxi, which was a good thing because it was not where the sign pointed at all. It was several turns and some distance away. But the taxi driver asked someone, I'm getting in the taxi without an address, but I directed him to the sign, and so he turned at the sign and asked somebody, and so after a conversation in Chinese that I didn't understand, he proceeds and makes the several turns and drops me off there. And so I got to visit the children's home, and I was really enlightened that in China, everything, the child welfare system is totally different from ours, whereas our child welfare system deals with children who are abused and neglected by whoever's taking care of them. In China, it's the primary issue there is abandonment. Children are abandoned because of their one-child policy. A lot of baby girls are abandoned, and if the children have any kind of disability, they're abandoned, because if you're a parent who can only have one child that you're going to need to take care of you in your old age, then...
Now, one-child policy, does that mean that if you have a second, that child is going to be extinguished?
They're not allowed to have a second, and in fact, they have, that's right, they have mandatory birth control. I don't know what happens if you have a second child. I think most people hide it if they do, or abandon that child.
Home birth and all that.
I did some research after I got home into that and found out that it's really relatively recent that China's been registering births. So it was very easy until the last probably maybe 30 years or so. It was very easy to hide the fact that a child had been born. And so they don't really have numbers except for the children that show up in orphanages and all. But part of my research, I also found that there's a group called Half the Sky who's gone over there and done a lot of work and improved conditions greatly, and that's what I observed in this children's home. The staff were attentive to the children. They were caring for them. Most of the children had special needs, the older children, and so they were addressing those needs. I got there right before lunchtime, so they already had the children that were not old enough to attend school, or here children attend school regardless of their condition, but there the children who have cystic fibrosis and cerebral palsy don't go to school, so they were at the children's home, and so they were all settled in for lunch, and these children were friendly and curious and interacted with me, and so did the staff. So that was really interesting to me because I want to somehow reach out to those children. It was an amazing experience. It was such a privilege to be able to go, to be part of Team USA, to represent the USA abroad. The Chinese people were amazing. As I said before, they're very friendly, they're very helpful, they're very curious. I had a lot of conversations with Chinese people, and some of the conversations, I don't know much of what was said, but then a lot of times There were a lot of people who spoke some English and a lot of people who had translation apps on their phones. So I would have conversations where we'd be typing into our phones and exchanging phones and communicate that way. So it was really interesting to see China's so different, and their culture goes back thousands of years, so it's a rich, vibrant culture, and it's different, but really people are all the same everywhere. We all want the same things.
That's funny.